I tell people all the time, if you're not able to have this conversation with your future spouse, maybe you shouldn't be getting married.
If you carry on with me.
Welcome to the Your Luxe Lifestyle podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. She's a sought-after family law attorney here in Miami, Francia Cabral.
Hi, Isabella. Thank you for
Hello.
having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I'm
Yes,
excited.
yes. So, Francia's here today, and we're going to chat about protecting our finances and also just not being jaded when looking for love as well. So, managing that. And, this is a podcast for high net worth individuals and aspiring high net worth individuals. So, how do we look for love while protecting our finances as well?
Okay. I'm happy to answer all of your questions.
Yes. So, first, I want to start with just getting to know you a little bit better. Tell me about you, how you got to where you are today.
So I was born and raised in Miami, been here my whole life. And I started working in the legal field very young. I was in high school. I was like 17 years old, my first job in the legal field. And I think on some level, I always wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And then, life has its own plans and threw me a few curveballs. I had my daughter very young. I was still in college, so it took me a little bit longer to get to law school and to become a lawyer. Um,
What made you choose family law out of all of the practices?
So I did a couple of different things as a legal assistant and a paralegal. I did a little bit of employment. I did a little bit of med mal and toxic torts, some civil litigation, but I always kept coming back to family law. I felt like it was an area of law where I could actually help people.
Right.
And I liked the complexity of navigating like a complex legal situation while also dealing with the emotion and psychology that goes along with family issues. So that's what made me stick with family law.
And it has a very personal aspect to it
Yeah.
versus just litigation or
Right.
more of a transactional
Right.
field.
And I do get to do litigation and negotiation and all of these other things that lawyers do, just, through a different lens, I guess you would say.
Right.
Yeah. So,
So then you decided this is the practice for me.
Mhm.
And when did you decide to go on your own?
So let's see. I guess it's been 2 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was at a firm for a really long time. I worked there for like 14 years. And after COVID, I think it was October 2020, I think COVID was like one of those times where everybody sort of questions like what they're doing and,
Like what else? What else is
yeah.
there?
So I kind of felt, I felt very comfortable there. I had grown up there. People there were like my family. The bosses were my mentors. I had learned so much from them. Um, but I kind of wanted to see like if I could do it, on my own. And it's funny because I didn't decide to go on my own at that point in time. I went to work for somebody else.
Okay.
And they told me, they were like, oh my God, you could start your own firm. What are you doing? You don't need to go work for somebody else. We'll help you. And I went to work for somebody else. And then, but I think that was exactly what I needed to figure out. Like, oh, I can
Can
do
I do
this.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, I took the leap. I started my own firm and never looked back. It's been great.
Good.
I'm very happy.
So there's definitely that entrepreneurial spirit in you.
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
one thing to have a specialty, a field, but then
Mhm.
also running a business as well. So you're doing both
Yeah.
at the same time versus, leaving it to someone else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's very admirable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to learn new skills and you're kind of learning as you go, you can prepare yourself as much as you want, but entrepreneurship is like a different animal.
Right.
It's
Especially with people, bringing
Mhm.
people on, hiring, firing,
Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
But it's exciting. It's exciting and I love, owning my own time, I think is
Oh, the best.
the best thing ever. And I'll never go back.
Yeah.
So
Once you're like, wait, I can make my own schedule.
yeah.
That's
Yeah. It
amazing.
comes with its different stresses, being a business owner And not only being responsible for your paycheck, but somebody else's, like that comes with a different type of stress. Um,
Because
but
then the
I'll,
turn off, right? It's like,
right.
when do I actually
Yeah.
turn off from this?
But it's great. I mean, I'll take this over working for somebody else any day.
Good, good. And so, what would you say is the biggest challenge you had to overcome getting to where you are right now, having your own practice?
I think the biggest challenge was really just overcoming my own fears about it. I was a single mom, and like I said, I went to law school a little bit later in life, so I didn't know if I was ready, and not having the security of a paycheck is a scary thing, especially
Right.
like
It's a
when
big risk.
you're a single parent. Um, I think that was the biggest challenge. Um, but once I got over that, yeah, it's like the sky's the
It
limit.
just, yeah, the door's
Yeah.
open. You're like, okay, I could
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah. And I think mindset is everything.
Yes.
If you believe that there's a chance you're going to fail, or if you believe that there's a chance that, you know, this isn't going to work out,
Yeah.
you psych yourself out.
Yeah.
You really do. So it's just a matter of checking your own mindset about things and keeping a positive mindset.
How do you do that though? What would you say? For me, mindset is it's huge. Like
Yeah.
that's what's gotten me through so much.
Yeah.
And I feel like, for me personally, I have to have the little pep talks.
Yeah.
Sometimes I write post-its, on the mirror. I'm like, you got this, you could do this. What would you say? How did you get in the mindset? Like, I can be a boss. I can also help all of these people, navigate also the emotions
Yeah.
with your clients.
So I think it's come in phases for me. And I think about 5 years ago, I started to realize that there were times in my life, like when I went to law school, I was working full time, I was going to law school at night, and I was
Wow.
raising my daughter.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, oh my God, you can't do that. Like, what are you doing? You're crazy. But I never believed I could fail. And that wasn't even an option. Like, I was like, what
Right.
do you mean I can't do it? Of course I can do it. Like,
Did that fuel you, them saying you can't? Or is that not?
yeah, I'm definitely one of those people.
Yeah.
Like, you tell me I
I'm gonna
can't, I'm
prove.
like, watch me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I started to notice about 5 years ago that those times in my life where I just didn't even feel like failure was like it wasn't even a thing,
Right.
those were the times where I succeeded like much more than I thought I ever could, just because I didn't believe ever that I could fail. Um
So you have that inner drive,
yeah,
and that obviously started,
a long
I don't,
time
yeah, a
ago.
long time
Yeah.
ago.
But I also started to notice that when I psych myself out about something, then, it's if you believe you can't, you can't. And
Right.
if you believe you can, you will. So I became very conscious of it about 5 years ago, and I just started to work on it a lot more. And I started to really um change my mindset about things, try to be more positive, not like toxic positivity, because I think you have to,
Preachy.
right, you
Yeah.
have to have your feelings about things and you have to give yourself the space to do that. But just keeping a positive outlook, seeing things from a different perspective. And it's something that I try to talk to my clients about too, because
Mhm.
it's really hard to have like a success mindset and to have a positive outlook on things when your entire world is falling apart, you
Right.
know?
Where you can't see that light at the end of
Right.
the tunnel. You're like, what's
Yeah.
happening? My life has changed. I've been in this whatever marriage for 20 years and now it's
Right.
it's over. This is all I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're grieving. You're grieving the loss of the life you thought you were going to have. You're grieving the loss of your marriage. Um, you're grieving this huge change in your life, like that you weren't prepared for, because I don't care what anybody says. Nobody gets married thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just get a divorce. Like nobody does
No.
that.
Yeah.
People don't do that.
Right.
So it's hard. It's really hard. And you could have everything going for you, and you could have money, and you could have, a great career, and your marriage still falls apart and you still got to deal with it.
Right.
So, you know, it's it's something that you have to just be very conscious of, and you have to just work on it every day,
Yeah.
you know?
Would you say that you feel like you're also their therapist? Like there's a fine line, right? You're like,
So,
this is I'm guiding you legally. I can't, right? You have to make sure
right.
that
So
they have the support system on their
I'm
own.
I'm very clear about the fact that I am not a therapist, you know? I do talk to my clients. I do guide them through the process. I coach them through the process and I tell them like, all right, this is what it's going to look like and this is what we're going to do.
Right.
What do you want? What do you want your life to look like after divorce? And this is how we're going to get there.
I like that.
Um,
So it's a plan. There's a plan.
right. So I try to come up with a plan, a way to get them to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I am very clear and I tell them, listen, I'm not a therapist. I'm not equipped. I'm not trained.
Right.
Um, I do listen to them. I let them vent to me when they need to. Um, but at the end of the day, I do encourage them and advise them to seek, therapy
Support.
from
Yeah.
and to establish their support system, find those people that you can talk to, find those people that you can rely on and, you know, use them,
Right.
utilize it. Because at the end of the day, I am your lawyer. And my job is to guide you through this process. I'll listen to you
Right.
and I will counsel you to the best of my ability, but there are just things I'm not equipped to do. And it's not the best use of your time or your money, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So,
Like, I'm gonna go now.
yeah, but I do ask, especially when I feel like there's times that the clients come in and they're ready. They've had their feelings about it,
They've
they've
worked through
grieved
it.
it,
Yeah.
they've done what they needed to do and they're ready to go on the divorce. And then there's other times where they feel sort of pushed into the situation because their spouse has filed or, you
Blindsided
know,
them.
blindsided them in some way. Or maybe they've been having issues forever. Maybe they've been separated for a while, but they still haven't just come to terms with it. And then I always advise, like, do you have a therapist? Do you need me to refer you to somebody? Maybe you want to work with a life coach,
Right.
do you have a support system, people you can talk to? Because I'm here you know,
A finite
for
amount
what
of
I'm here
time.
for,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's super important to have that support and to have that guidance and to have, therapy if you need it in that moment.
And be realistic as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to ask you something a little lighter.
Sure.
What is the most luxurious or priceless thing you own?
Oh,
Since this is a,
yeah, I touched
luxury lifestyle
I
podcast.
touched upon this earlier, my
Yeah.
time for
Yes.
sure. Yeah. I
100%. Like you said, being able to wake up whenever you want.
yeah, just I love my mornings. I wake up like if I have to be somewhere by 9 or 10 o'clock, I wake up extra early just so that I have like an hour, 2 hours to myself. I listen to my podcast, I drink my coffee, I sit outside, I play with my dog, and I
Nice.
start my day the way I want to start it. And just being able to do that, being able to work from home, being able to structure my day. If my daughter has something going on or, you know, I want to do something else or I want to take time off, I'm able to structure my day around that. And I don't
Yeah.
think
And you can't get that back.
you
So it's not,
can't.
it's something you
You
can't buy.
can't.
Yeah. I love that. Definitely
Yeah,
priceless.
definitely.
And if money was not an issue,
Hmm.
what else would you be doing and why?
So, life coaching, and I'm actually working on it.
Oh,
Thank you. I'm getting certified as a life coach,
okay.
and yeah, I just feel I really like those soft apps aspects and of my job. I like working with people closely and just helping them through a tough time. And if I could do that in a more meaningful way,
Right.
actually working with them to get them to where they want to be. Yeah, I
So
think that would be
technically, when they
amazing.
say, when you would say, "Oh, but I'm not your therapist," you'll be able to change that. You'll say, "I can life coach," right?
Well, yeah,
Or would it
but
be?
I
It
think it would be a
not.
conflict if
Yeah.
I
So separate. We keep the businesses
separate,
separate.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
I love that.
yeah, so I'm working on it. I'm working on my next
Congratulations.
passion, my next thing. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So now I want to segue into some expert questions
Sure.
down to the nitty gritty. What are some ways that couples can prepare themselves before marriage?
So, I tell everybody they should go to couples counseling before they get married.
Okay.
I think prenups are super important. A lot of people have this misconception that prenups are only for wealthy people. And that's not necessarily true. You can decide ahead of time, whether you're going to get or pay or leave the alimony question open. If your parents have accumulated a little something, maybe it's just your parents' house,
Mhm.
but you want to make sure that you're protecting that. Um, that's a reason to get a prenup. If you own a business, if you have children from a prior relationship, there's so many reasons why you might want to do that. Um, Also,
Why
if
is there a stigma though? Why are some people, "Oh, I won't marry you if there's a prenup."
I, you know, I think people think it's like a non romantic thing to do, and maybe he doesn't really love me if he's asking me to get a prenup. And can I curse? I think that's such bullshit. Um, I tell people all the time, it's kind of like an insurance policy,
Okay.
You don't wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, I think today's a good day to get into a car accident. I think I'll do that today."
Right.
No,
It's
things
planning.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that you just have to be realistic about the fact that things change. People, change, people grow apart. Um, and sometimes it just happens. You can work really hard on your marriage and,
Mhm.
20 years later realize like we've been working so hard for something. It's like beating a dead horse, maybe some huge life changing thing happens in your life and you and your spouse are unable to navigate it through together. A lot of things just happen. um
So what would someone, let's say you're thinking about it, right? What would
mhm.
you necessarily put in a prenup?
So if you have assets from prior to your marriage, then that would be something to put into a prenup. You can decide also to waive homestead rights. You can decide to waive elective share because automatically, by operation of law, if you're married to somebody, they are entitled to a certain percentage of your estate.
Okay.
Um, so, these are all things that you can decide ahead of time. I always recommend that people who are getting a prenup also work on their estate plan. That's
Right.
not something I do, but I refer them to somebody who does that,
Okay.
and sort of have the two work
So it's like
together.
a holistic plan.
Yeah, right. So that you're figuring out what's going to happen if you pass away and you're married, what's going to happen if you get divorced. It's also a good way to make sure that you're providing and protecting for kids from a prior relationship.
Right.
Um, if you're in your 40s or 50s and getting married, maybe for the second time, that's a good time to do it. Or if you're young and starting your career, maybe you're working on something and you are going to be a high earner, um, maybe decide now what you want to do with that. And it's better to decide when things are good,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
And not
not
negotiate when you're fighting.
right. So it's always better. I think it's always the most responsible thing to do. And if you're not, I tell people all the time, if you're not able to have this conversation with your future spouse, maybe
That
you
may not
shouldn't be
be
getting married
right
because you should be able to have these conversations openly and honestly.
without it becoming a fight.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Or maybe there is a discussion. Maybe you do, maybe this is the conversation you need to realize maybe we don't see things the same way. Maybe we can work through it.
Right.
Maybe we do need to have a fight about it and we can get past it.
But at
And
least it's out there. We've spoken
right,
about
we've
it.
talked about it, and now we know where we stand. And, I think it can only make your relationship stronger, just being upfront, being honest, having the conversation, and making sure everybody knows what they're getting into ahead of
Right.
time. Yeah.
And it varies state to state, correct? The
Yes.
laws. Okay.
Right.
So what, alimony laws or, any of the support or,
Hmm.
something I was thinking about the other day was, let's say you're not married, right?
Hmm.
So what rights, and then you don't have a prenup or a postnup. How does
Right.
that work? It's
So,
been a long-term relationship.
yeah. So there are a couple of states still that recognize common law marriage. Florida's not one of them. So there's a lot of people who think that because they've been in a relationship, they've been living together, they have children together, that they have rights for support for themselves. Um, that's not the case. You're not
Wow.
married. You're not married. You're not a spouse. Um, if you have children together, you're entitled to child support, but that's where it ends. Um, yeah. So there is something else called a cohabitation agreement.
Okay.
And that's a good way to figure out, for example, how are you going to pay the bills if you guys live together? Let's say, your new boyfriend, your
Mhm.
relationship, he's moving into your house that you own. What happens if you guys break up? How's that process going to look like?
Right.
Are you going to
Is
have to
there a
evict
certain
him if
amount
he,
of time that
um,
they before you can get the cohabitation, or is it I'm in a 6-month relationship now? We need this agreement.
so I
Does
think
the
it's
law
only,
need you to wait a certain amount of time?
no, I think it's just a contract between two people. Um, so if you're living together, that's a good time to talk about it.
Okay.
How are we going to pay the bills? If you own real estate together, you might want to do something like that.
Right.
Um, because yeah, if you're both on the deed, okay, you have property rights, but at what percentages? What happens if we split up? Who's going to stay in the house? Who's going to have right of first refusal? All of those things are important things to talk about.
Right.
Just because now you're mixing your
Funds
finances
and
and
yeah.
funds, and so
Or
it's
one person's now going to have to find somewhere else to live. So how do we
right.
we
And what
not
if
fight
that
about
person
that?
refuses to move out of your house?
Right.
So what's going to happen? Are you going to have to evict them? Like, come on.
Call the police.
Right. So, it's just it's not the same thing as a prenup because
Not
it's
as
not,
detailed, right?
right, but it is important to have those conversations and still protect yourself. I
Can
think
you put non-financial, like, are there non-financial aspects that can go in a prenup as well?
um such
Or is
as,
that
let's see, it's mostly financial.
okay?
It's mostly financial. It's mostly to protect, how you're going to keep your finances, what you're going to do in the event of a divorce, um, transfers of property, things like that. What happens in the event that one of you passes away?
Mhm.
How's that going to be treated? It's mostly financial. We don't put anything related to children in prenuptial agreements.
Okay.
Um,
What about I've heard of this, I'm not sure if this is, like a cheating clause.
yeah, I've heard of that
If
too.
you cheat, then you
I've
X what you'll be punished for this, or I don't know, some sort of
I've
financial
never
penalty.
I've never actually put that into a prenuptial agreement.
Okay.
Um, I've never had a client who's wanted it. Um, but I've heard people do that, putting
Okay.
those clauses in, like some sort of punishment if you cheat.
Could that be held up in court
Um,
or no?
I don't know. I've never actually litigated it.
Okay.
That's a good question. I'll look into that. I don't see why not. I don't see why not. I mean, it's a contract.
Right. No, I've heard of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure how it panned out.
Yeah.
If you cheat, then you need to pay $100,000 penalty or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if those are real. If the judge would be like, "What is this?"
Yeah, I don't actually, I've never put that into a prenup. I've never had a client that wants that. Um, but I'll look into that and get back to you.
Okay. Okay. And okay, so we're talking about prenups, but there's also postnuptial
Right.
agreements. What's the difference between a prenuptial agreement and a postnuptial agreement?
Uh, okay, so the most basic difference is that a prenup is an agreement that's signed in contemplation of marriage. So before you get married and becomes effective upon your marriage. A postnup is what you do it during your marriage. So you're already married. Um, and you can do that for a number of reasons. You might want a postnup if you want to change the terms of your prenup.
Okay.
Um,
So renegotiating that.
yeah, if you want to renegotiate or change some terms, you can do a postnup. You can also do a postnup if you don't have a prenup and you feel like maybe you should have. Um, and sometimes people do postnups in contemplation of divorce. Maybe you're going to decide to stay married for a little while for whatever the reasons are,
Mhm.
or you're having marital issues and you want to decide, okay, we want to take the pressure off of the marriage.
Right.
Let's decide what's going to happen if this doesn't work out. Um, we're going to put this into an agreement and then we're just going to leave it there and work on our marriage. And then if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out,
Then
then
you
we
have
have this thing.
the contract.
Yeah.
is it looked down upon, like, you're setting yourself up for the marriage to be over? Is it like, why are we doing this? Just like the same as someone that doesn't want the prenup, right?
Right.
Is it, well, why are we doing this now? Or I feel like we're setting ourselves up for divorce.
I think that some people do see it that way. I think that it depends on your reasons, you
Mhm.
know? I've had there have been a lot of cases, that I've worked on where, one of them is requesting the postnup to take the pressure off of the marriage, and really what they were doing was just preparing themselves for the inevitable divorce,
Mhm.
and the other spouse feels blindsided. Like maybe they accepted things in the hopes that their marriage would get better, that they wouldn't in light of a divorce.
Right.
So I think that you just have to go about it very realistically.
And communicate.
Right, which is hard to do when you're emotional about things. So I think it's really important to have good legal counsel
Right.
and to listen to your counsel because, you know, yeah, you know what's best in your heart and in your gut for you and
Right.
for your life. But sometimes it's just difficult to see things clearly when you're going through it, when you're in the midst of it.
Right.
And maybe you're thinking and you're, wishful thinking and you're not listening to the best advice, you
Right.
know?
So I think that, like you said earlier, it's a great way to, like, for someone that's considering a postnuptial, just kind of like set the terms, get it out of the way.
Right.
You didn't have the prenup, and just while everything is good, this way, just in case in the future if something happens, it's already laid out.
Right.
So yeah, I think I'm a pro believer in prenups or postnups. Either way,
Me
I feel
too.
like it's a great way to kind of set the standard for a relationship.
Right. And, the thing is, like, people get prenups, like, leading up to their marriage and they think things are going to look a certain way or they've planned things out and then things change, you know? So maybe they need to tweak things, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe they decide once they're actually doing this marriage thing that maybe one of them does need to stay home with the kids, you know? And okay, so how do we make this fair if one of you is giving up your career to be a stay-at-home parent?
Right.
Um, and I think traditionally that was always the woman, but more and more these days, we have men being the ones staying at home with the kids because their wives are making more money or because their career is on an upward tick or for whatever reason,
Right.
you know? So I think that it's important just to have these conversations like, okay, if I'm going to give up my career, then we need to talk about these things,
Right. And have it in writing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I pro agreement.
Yeah. Okay. So it should
Very
be the
much.
standard.
Yeah.
And what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that some of your clients make?
Oof. Litigating unnecessarily. I think it's
Racking
really,
that bill up.
yeah, man. It's
Well,
and
I mean, that's good for you.
yeah, yeah. I
It's
make
good for
more I
business.
make more money if we go to court, right? But at the end of the day, I just see it day in and day out. And I tell my clients this, you shouldn't do this. You
So you
just
do
should not.
advise them to,
Yeah.
what is that called? Mediation?
Yeah.
Mediation, right?
Yeah. And so it's hard, right? Because man, sometimes you just want to punch them in the throat, like, oh,
Yeah. Snap out of it.
you're
Like,
so
stop being so emotional and
right,
just, save some money. Use that money for the future to,
right. And
rebuild your
and I don't
life.
mean punch my clients in the throat.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
sometimes you want to punch your ex in the throat. Like
Right.
you're just, oh, I can't stand this person, Like, why are they making my life so difficult? But you have to,
It's to hurt the other person, ultimately, right?
yeah,
It's like,
man. What gets me the most, I think, is when people hate each other more than they love their kids.
oh, yeah.
Oh man, that
They
just
have to
it
suffer.
kills me. It kills me. Um, and they're just so angry and so bitter, and they just it's just not a good way to go about this. Um, I
What's
think,
the longest that you've ever had a case go on for?
okay,
Because
so
that would be expensive.
from beginning to divorced,
Yeah.
probably about 3 years.
Ooh.
But then you have some cases that just keep coming back and coming
How
back
would it
for
come back?
they're fighting about things still. he didn't comply with this, she didn't comply with
Oh, so
that.
even after
Yeah.
the divorce.
So even after the divorce, they're still fighting. They're still going through things. And yeah, so I mean, I have clients that have been clients for 7 years, for whatever reason. Yeah.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. You you think you do everything, you have a prenup, you have a
Hmm.
postnup. Can it be contested? Can it be fought
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
court?
Yeah. But you got to be careful about contesting a properly, um, executed agreement, right? Because pretty much every prenup or postnup has what's called it's escaping me. Hold on. It's called oh,
Like a penalty or
it's a clause that
clause?
we put in there, that prevailing party provision. That's what it's
Okay.
called. Um,
What is that?
so if we enter into this agreement and now you want to challenge it, but you lose, you got to pay your fees and mine because you lost. Um,
What if that's in the agreement that they're not going to pay that?
so
Could that be put in the agreement?
you can
That
put.
regardless of the divorce,
Mm.
I'm not going to pay your legal fees. Could that be in there regardless of the
So
prevailing?
so people put that into agreements, but that's under Florida law, not necessarily legal.
Okay.
Just like you can't waive what we call temporary alimony, which is um, alimony during the pendency of a divorce. Under current Florida law, that's not legal. You can't waive it, but people do it and put it into agreements anyway because if the law changes in the future,
Oh, I see.
it's there. Um, and we put in there recognizing that under current Florida law, this is not, in the
So
event
you
that,
have a little
yeah, yeah. But prevailing party provision is separate to an attorney's fee provision. It's if you challenge this and lose, you're paying for my attorneys too. It's, yeah, and they're upheld.
is that just a Florida thing?
I
Or
don't think so.
okay.
No, but we do. I put it into all of my agreements.
And so what happens if someone contests? What is that process? That now drags on the divorce,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So usually what happens is that the court will bifurcate the case, like they'll bifurcate the divorce. When what that means is that we're separating it. So we'll decide separately from the actual getting divorced whether or not there's the agreement is valid. So we'll contest those two things separately.
Separately.
Um,
Does that extend it? Or
it
I guess I don't understand the bifurcating.
It could, and basically, you're just separating the issues.
Okay.
So we're going to decide we're going to have like a separate trial on this than we are on that. And the importance of that is that, the divorce might go a different way if, if the prenup or postnup stands or whether it doesn't. So you separate those two issues.
So they could be two different timelines. You can get divorced and then still
Mm-hmm.
fight over the prenup.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
And they're not
complex. Yeah.
easy to set aside. They're not. Like, I think people think, "Oh, well, whatever, I'll just challenge it." And I think that I mean, people challenge them all the time.
Right.
And I say they're not easy to set aside because it is a binding contract. If all of the steps were followed and if it was done properly,
Mhm.
it's not easy to set aside. There may have been changes and updates in the law that, maybe this provision or that provision we can tweak or whatever, but um, they're not as easy to set aside as people think.
Okay.
And so it's important that you go into it knowing,
Right.
knowing what you're doing and with the right advice.
And does the court or does the judge look down upon that? If you see if someone's just stalling or fighting unnecessarily, I know there's a prevailing clause, but is there a way that you can speed it up? Or I know there's mediation. You can set
Right.
it for trial or
Right.
yeah.
So it's a process, right? Like anything.
Like let's
And
say you're a single mom, you have
Mhm.
kids, you're working. You
Mhm.
can't do this forever. You can't pay legal fees,
Right.
right?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of other things you can do to sort of like avoid litigation.
Mhm.
Um There's something called collaborative divorce, which I'm a big fan of,
Mhm.
and I believe in it, and I promote it to my clients because I think it's a much healthier way to get through a divorce process.
But
Um,
that's the mindset, right? They both have to be
right, they both
in the
have to be
same page.
willing to
Yeah.
do it. I think, a big selling point for it is that it's a confidential process. So all your business is not in the court file.
Okay, that's good.
So I think that especially for a lot of like business owners or people who are high net worth individuals, whether it be because, they're just business people, or because they have some type of celebrity status,
Mhm.
the confidentiality aspect of it
It's a
is
plus for
it's a big
sure.
plus
Yeah.
because,
No one
like
needs to know that.
nobody needs to know. And I mean, even if you're not a public figure or anything like that, like you don't want your kids to one day stumble upon all of the nasty things that went back and forth, between you and their dad or, you know. So I think what I love about the collaborative divorce process is that the confidentiality aspect of it. Secondly, that you keep the decision making ability between you and your spouse. Like, even if you're going through a difficult time, like, this is a great opportunity for you guys to just make the decisions for your family between yourselves. For better or for worse, you chose to have a family with this person.
So where does that you sit in front of each other and you talk about it?
Right.
Or
So
is
it's
this how
so
does that
the
work?
way that it works is that you each have your attorneys, your legal counsel. There's also a facilitator who's usually a mental health expert.
Okay.
And then,
Court appointed or how do you
no,
choose?
you agree upon it.
Okay.
And then there's also like a neutral forensic financial expert. And basically everything is addressed sort of as a team. We
Okay.
have team meetings where we sit across the table from each other and we say whatever we need to say and we address things. And then, the facilitator is there to either help you move past certain issues. Maybe they need to talk to the husband for a little bit
Okay.
about, I see that this is an issue for you. How can we get past this? Whatever. Maybe it's the wife who needs to have that conversation. And so
It's a group effort.
yeah, so it's a team approach, and everybody, even the attorneys, have to sign what's called a participation agreement. And so everybody's committed to making this work. And if for whatever reason it falls apart and it doesn't work,
Mhm.
now you both have to go and get new lawyers because
Oh
your
wow.
lawyers can't also litigate for you.
Wow.
So, it keeps everybody honest and
Yeah.
it keeps everybody committed to making this work.
Okay.
So I love that, and I love that it's a much healthier way to get past these very personal and emotional issues. And I love that it's confidential.
Yeah.
So your finances, all your business is not in the public record somewhere.
It's private.
Right.
So speaking of honesty, and you
Mm-hmm.
said something else, forensic uh
Financial.
financial
Yeah.
account. Okay. So let's say you're a high net worth individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're the breadwinner, you make a lot of money, and you're going through a divorce, but you want to make sure now you're upset. You want to make sure that your wife or husband um does not see everything that you have, right? You're trying to hide things.
Mm.
How does that work if you have isn't that the purpose of the financial investigator? Forensic
Right.
financial
Yeah.
investigator?
So usually we hire forensic accountants, and their job is to dig and to find and to get everything situated and tell you everything that's there. Um, and we also have very broad discovery laws in Florida. So, like, there's something called mandatory disclosure, and that's like the minimum amount of documents that you're going to exchange.
So you voluntarily say all of your assets.
You
Is that what
It's
that
not
is?
really voluntary.
Oh, okay. It's
You're
mandatory. Yeah,
required.
yeah,
It's
yeah. Okay.
mandatory.
Yeah.
So it's not that it doesn't happen. There are people who try to hide things all the time. Um, but with everything, there's a paper trail to everything now. So
Mhm.
it's
Eventually it comes
it
out.
comes out most of the time. There's times that people do get away with it, but for the most part, yeah, it does come out. It's If you have money coming from here to there, there's a paper trail to that. It's
Right.
going to be in a statement somewhere. There's going to be proof of it somewhere. So it's not as easy to hide assets as people think.
Okay.
If you have assets overseas, if you have things,
Or putting them in other people's names.
Putting
People
them
do
in other
that,
people's names.
right?
But if it was ever in your name and then you transferred it out of your
Oh,
name,
okay. There's a record. Yeah.
there's a record. So, not that it never happens. It does. It happens from time to time. But, you know, or there's a lot of people who make their money like some sort of cash business.
Right.
That's harder to prove. So there are ways that people can get around it, but I think that it's important to have a financial expert on your side to analyze the records and to
So it's a neutral person and
not
they
always
investigate each person?
in the collaborative process, it's a neutral person that works as part of the team.
Okay.
You can hire a neutral if things are fairly amicable between you and your spouse, or if you feel fairly certain that you know where you stand or where he stands or she stands financially, and you know everything that's there, or you trust that you do,
Okay.
you can hire a neutral. But if it's a contested case, you're going to want to have your own
Okay.
because your your interpretation of things may not be their expert's interpretation of things, and there's always going to be a, an area like a gray
Great.
area. So you're going to want to have somebody on your side, an expert on your side that can argue, you know,
For you.
for
Yeah.
you and testify in court and say, no, this is what this is.
And so what if they find out someone's hiding? What's the
Yeah, that wouldn't be.
it just extends the case more? Like
It
what
could, it could. If you find somebody's like committed some sort of fraud, like that's not a good position to be in, being the person that committed the fraud. Because even if the case is over, if I discover, a year later that somebody was hiding all of these assets, you could go back to court and have the entire case set
Okay.
aside.
Okay.
So yeah, it does extend things and make things crazier, but um, yeah,
So be honest, guys.
yeah, it's just better to put it out there, try to do things as amicably as possible. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people like, I have a lot of cases where, as long as you provide like the sufficient disclosure and you have yours, I have mine, we're just going to walk away from this. I just, you
Well,
know,
most married couples know, right? Like you're aware of
most,
what's going on, right? But then there are
most,
yeah, some that
but there's still a lot of people who have no idea. Maybe during your marriage, your husband was the one who paid all the bills, or your wife was the one who paid all the bills, and
you just live
yeah,
life.
you just
Yeah.
want to, you had other jobs in your
Right.
marriage, and you have an idea about what things are, but maybe you don't fully know the extent of the debt that you had, or what all of the expenses were, or what assets you had. Maybe you have an idea, but you don't know
Right.
fully. So.
Could your spouse purchase property without you knowing while you're married?
Um, so typically if you're taking out a loan or something like that, or if you're it it usually does require you to have a spouse's signature.
Okay.
Um, it depends. Real estate, it's kind of harder to hide. But if you're doing it like in a business name or something like that, then there are ways to do it. Um, so it can happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
But
seen on a lot of celebrities, or the wife's like, I had no idea, or I just signed, I trusted my husband, and then
yeah.
they end up in trouble.
Yeah. I had a case once where, the husband was facing all of these like mortgage fraud charges, and she just signed papers, and I
Wow.
was like, how did you not know? And she's like, I just trusted him. He said he was doing business stuff and he needed my signature. I just signed. you
Wow.
know I I
Did
shouldn't
she
have
get in
done it.
trouble?
I don't know what ended up happening after the case was over. We ended up settling the case, and
Okay.
everybody just wanted it to sort of go away,
Over, yeah.
just because there was so much other stuff going on. But yeah, they both had like criminal lawyers, and yeah, there was
Wow.
a lot going on. Yeah,
Yikes.
yeah, it was crazy. It happens.
So, how important would you say mindset is when going through a divorce? I know that's like a reoccurring theme. I think
Yeah,
that, you know, again, you have the support system,
right.
you either have a prenup or a postnup, but as you're going through the divorce, again, we said that you're grieving. There's a
Yeah,
lot that's going on. Maybe there's kids involved. Maybe there's obviously there's mutual friends.
right.
So, how do you where should you be?
So I think that you just have to. I think going through a divorce is one of those situations in life where you just have to surrender, and kind of come to the point of acceptance
Okay.
of what's happened. Um, because when you're at that point, there isn't anything more you can do if you've done everything you can do to try to save your marriage. It's just reaching the point of acceptance. Once you've accepted that this is my life,
Mhm.
this is what's happening, it becomes a lot easier to get past it, you know? And I think that acceptance is the hardest part. I think that's like
Right.
what people struggle with. Like,
This is my new life.
I can't believe this is happening. Like, how did we get here? I think once you're, and it takes time, it takes time to get to that point. Um, Sometimes I have clients, people that come in for consultations and I tell them, I don't think you're ready. I don't
Oh,
think you're
really?
ready to go through this process.
So
Um,
they're the ones that want to file.
they're coming because they're angry. Something has happened. Maybe they've just, maybe their spouse just told them, like, listen, I'm moving out. Or maybe they just found out that their spouse is cheating, or maybe, a
Right.
million things that
Various
happen.
things. Yeah.
Um, and they're now in this position of uncertainty and they're angry and they're hurt. And so the first thing they want to do is talk to a lawyer. Um, And I tell them, okay, so this is what the process would look like, and this is what I think you should do, whatever. This is my advice.
Mhm.
Um, but then I'll tell them, like, I think you need a little bit of time before you're ready. I mean, unless there's like something pressing.
Is there a
So
benefit to being the first one to file?
it
Or is it
doesn't
just more of an ego thing?
it doesn't really make a difference. I think,
Okay.
you can always file a counter petition, like
Okay.
I want a divorce. Well, I want a divorce too, like
Right.
so.
Right.
The person who files first has to pay the filing fee. I think that in most cases, it doesn't make much of a difference. Um, in some cases, it does because there's other stuff going on,
Mhm.
and you're sort of setting the stage for what you want to do in the case.
But legally, there are no
Not
advantages.
necessarily,
Okay.
no. I think that if there's a certain strategy that you want to put in place, or if something's happened, somebody started transferring money out of
Mhm.
accounts and you don't know where they've put the money, you need to go ahead and file like yesterday and get the judge involved to get, orders to freeze assets or figure out where the money has gone.
Right.
Then yeah, there's a benefit to filing. But, you know, outside of circumstances like that, no, not generally speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the opposite? Like someone wanting to delay the case. There's someone, there's the person that wants to file first,
Mhm.
get it moving. What if you realize, okay, this person is trying to stall? How do you,
Yeah, that happens a lot, and there's so many ways in which somebody can stall a case. There's so many ways in which people can stall cases, and it's frustrating, especially for the person who's on the receiving end of that, because there's only so much you can do.
right?
There's a lot of ways in which people can stall, um, and judges,
They see that.
They do, but they also give people a lot of opportunities to do the right thing, So let's say you were supposed to respond to discovery by, Friday, and now it's next month and you still haven't responded and we've gone back and forth and I gave you an extension. Now I'm going to have to go in front of a judge. And the judge is going to give them a couple more days and say, "Okay, you need to respond by this time." And then, those days will pass and then maybe you need to go in front of the judge again and then the judge is going to be like, "Okay, I
So
told
there's
you
all
last time."
these, yeah,
Yeah, so
extra
there's a lot of ways in which people can stall, and it is frustrating. It is very frustrating. Um and sometimes it's not that people are stalling. Sometimes it's just
emotion. Again, the mindset. Maybe they're
right.
just not ready.
Yeah, they're
They
not
started the
ready.
process and they're just like,
Yeah. And there's a lot of just there's a million reasons why cases take long too. Like sometimes it's just the judge's calendar is bombarded and there's a million other things going on. It's hard to get a hearing date within, a certain period of time.
okay,
So these are all reasons, more reasons why I tell people like, let's try to work things out,
yeah.
unless there's some reason why you have to litigate, let's try to figure it out, just there's a million reasons why, but it's
Yeah,
another
those
one.
are yeah. And what would you say are some trends that you've been seeing, let's say in the last 5 years with divorce cases? Are there any commonalities or you see people filing for certain reasons? Are there
um,
any laws that have changed like
yeah.
the way that
So
divorces are handled?
right. So yes, I think last year there were a lot of changes to Florida law. Um, Notably, there's two huge changes. One of them was that there's no longer permanent alimony. It used to be that if you were married for a long term, which was considered to be 17 or more years, um, that was considered permanent alimony territory.
Okay.
Um, there's that doesn't exist anymore. You can still get alimony, but permanent is
So when does
not an
how
option.
long does it if it's not permanent, what's the time frame?
So it depends on how long you've been married, and it
Okay.
depends on other factors. There's a list of statutory factors that the court is going to look at and consider. Um, and so I it's not going to be indefinite anymore. There's going to be a period of time. Um, and the other
Like at
huge,
some point you have to get a job.
yeah, and I think there's pros and cons, right? Because I don't know, maybe you're a person who's has some sort of disability and unable to work,
Right.
and so I think with everything there are cases and there are cases. Um, So I think it really just depends on your circumstances and, figuring out what you want to do and how you're going to do it. And then, knowing that there's no more permanent alimony, taking that into account, you know. Um, the other huge change is that there's now a presumption in the law towards 50-50 time sharing. Um,
What is time sharing?
Time sharing is like custody.
Oh, for kids.
Yeah, for
Okay.
kids.
Not the Orlando homes. Like
No,
the
no, no, no.
condos in Orlando.
Not timeshares,
Yeah.
time sharing. Um, yeah, so some years ago, Florida did away with this concept of, or not, it's, the concept is pretty much the same, but they're calling it different things. Custody between parents, it's divided, time sharing and parental responsibility. So it's analogous to physical custody and legal custody.
Okay.
Parental responsibility is like the ability to make decisions over your children, and time sharing is the amount of time you're going to
You
spend with
spend
your
with them.
kids. And so now it's in the statute, it's a rebuttable presumption that parents have equal time sharing rights. So we start from the position that it's 50-50, unless there's some reason
Some right.
why you can rebut that presumption that that's what's in the best interest of the kids. Um, yeah.
Which I'm sure people fight about, right?
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, unless there's like some really compelling reason, why this other parent shouldn't have 50-50, then the judge is going to give them 50-50 because that's what the statute says. So, yeah.
So be careful who you have kids with. Think
Yeah.
wisely.
Yeah, yeah. There was also, other changes with regards to paternity laws, and paternity is when you have a child with somebody and you're not married to them.
Okay.
It used to be that the mother was the natural guardian of the child, and now there's been some changes to the paternity laws in that sense. So, you know, yeah, you got to be really
Yeah.
careful who you have kids with.
Wow.
Yeah,
And so as far as trends, you would say more people are doing prenups
I think
or
so.
same or
I I've seen
from when you first started?
more prenups in my practice. I've also seen a lot more cohabitation agreements. I think that like over the last 5 years for sure. Um, I didn't used to see any of them, and now it's like people are actually calling and saying, "Hey, I'm moving in with, my boyfriend or my girlfriends. What do I need to be aware of?"
Right.
And mostly because a lot of
How
people
do they find out about that? Like how would someone know where are they getting these resources?
they don't
Instagram? I don't
maybe
know.
they don't really know. I think a lot of people still think if you live together for a certain period of time, then they treat you as if you're married, and that's not true.
Right.
Um, but I think people are afraid of that. So I've had people call and say, like, hey, do I need to be worried about this?
What's the right way
Um,
to do this?
right. Um, and I think more people are talking about it. Um, just like, oh, be careful. Like
Yeah,
I've heard these horror stories. And so, so they might call because of that. Like, oh, I had a friend that went through a bad situation and whatever. I want to avoid
make
that.
sure.
How do I do that? I don't think that it's something that a lot of people are doing, but definitely I think it's picking up.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so
Yeah.
more prenups and
Yeah.
cohabs. And what should our listeners take away from today? Like, what would you say, or what are some resources or what are best ways that, let's say you're either you've already amassed a certain amount of wealth or you're on your way, you're building, your empire.
Yeah.
What should someone keep in the back of their mind as they're then the next checklist is I want a partner. So
Right. I
what should they
think
remember?
I think it's important to go into things eyes wide open, you know? Because marriage is a beautiful thing, or it can be at least.
Right.
Not every marriage is beautiful, but I think marriage and partnership is a beautiful thing. And I think that if you're open and you're honest and you have these conversations, it can only bring you closer or it
Right.
can show you,
Their true care intentions.
yeah, and maybe you're not seeing things eye to eye and maybe it's something you can work through, maybe it's not, but it's better to know than not know.
Right.
Um, because you want to be aware, you want to know what you're getting yourself into. Um, it's you want to have these hard conversations. You want to talk about these things. You want to have a prenup in place. You want to know going into it what you're getting into,
Right.
what it's going to look like, and really I think it'll give you a taste of what your partner is like in during conflict.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if we don't agree on this, now I know
Right. Right.
this is
Yeah.
how he's going to handle it or she's going to handle it moving forward.
Right. So my biggest recommendations would be definitely counseling and therapy before you get married. If you think you're leaning in that direction
Mhm.
or maybe you're engaged, now's the time. Have all of these conversations and definitely prenups. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, those would be if you take nothing else from this,
That's it.
those are the two. Yeah.
And then what are some resources would you say that um obviously contacting
Yeah.
a lawyer, but let's say they want to do their own research. Are there any like
You kn-
websites, forums, or books they can read,
yeah,
podcasts other than this one?
there's a lot of like resources out there, but I think the law is so gray in so many ways, and how the law is applied to your particular situation is not going to always be. So black and white.
Mhm.
So I think a lawyer is probably your best bet. Just talk to somebody that can give you advice for your particular situation. Obviously, there's a million resources out there. Um, and there's a lot of podcasts and things that you could listen to,
Right.
which is wonderful, right? Because there's so many people who have been through this that can give you advice based upon what they've been through. But you have to take that also with a bit of a grain of salt, right? Because
Their situation's
their
not yours.
situation
Yeah.
isn't yours. And you have to be careful. You got to be careful because the law might say, you know, X, Y, and Z, but in your particular situation, there might be this other thing that the court will consider and the
Right.
outcome may be different.
Right.
So it's important to,
Take it with a grain of salt.
yeah, and to just, if you're going through a situation or you're thinking about getting married, having issues with your spouse, whatever the case may be, it's important to talk to a lawyer and prepare yourself for that. And for people having kids who are
Right.
not married, that's a huge area for conflict. Um, and just as a father, you really need to establish your rights, um, whether it's by agreement, by court order, whatever the case may be. You need to do that, to make sure.
So that way, in case there is a divorce, you are actually able to see your kid, or the wife doesn't take,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Is that
and
what you mean by rights?
yeah, to establish your rights and to establish your paternity. And I'll give you just like a brief little case situation. Um, I have a client right now who was in a long term relationship. For whatever reason, he wasn't on the birth certificate for the child. And um, the child has his last name and everything.
Mhm.
But then mom tragically passed away.
Oh, wow.
And there's no documents that says he's the father of this child. So now we're having to go to court to establish his rights after mom has passed away.
Wow.
Um, he couldn't even make changes at his daughter's school because he
There's
wasn't
no,
on the birth certificate. There's no court order that says he's the dad. Even though he was listed like as an emergency contact, he was listed as the father on,
right.
the contact cards and all that stuff. The school was like, okay, but
So they never thought of this before? It's just, I guess people just, you
you
get
just
into
go,
your
yeah, you
routine.
go through life
Yeah.
and you don't think about these things and
Wow.
things happen.
So do you
So
do a test? Could you do I don't know,
yeah,
like a
you
Maury Povich? I don't
DNA
know.
test
Yeah.
and you can do all of those things, but you still need like a court order that says
Okay.
you're the dad, gives you
Wow.
rights to make decisions. And fortunately, in this particular case, he gets along great with the mother's family.
Okay.
But if it's a situation where you don't, you know,
Right. They'll be like, sorry.
yeah,
Wow.
like go deal with it,
Yeah.
you know. So it's just things to be aware of, It's just things to be aware of and be careful of
Yeah.
because you never know. Your life can change from one moment to the next. Accidents happen, people pass away, and it's just things you need to be careful of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
You're
much. This is
welcome.
definitely very insightful.
Thank
And
you.
I mean, I know that I have a little bit of knowledge myself just from personal, but to the, other listeners out there, if you're thinking of getting married or you're going through a divorce or whatever, um, how can they find you? What's the best way that they can?
So my office phone number is 786-631-4746. I'm located in Coconut Grove. So yeah, you can find me there. I'm also my website, www.franciacabrallaw.com, and Instagram by the same name, Francia Cabral Law, is my handle. So yeah, you can find me there. I try to post videos and little
I love
things.
those.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's good because they're short, they're sweet, they get to the point,
Yeah.
and they give you the little tidbits like, oh, I was wondering about this, or instead of Googling,
Yeah.
you have the
Yeah.
answers right
Just a
there.
little bit of education and little questions that we get here and there and things that come up. I try to answer them in a video. So maybe that's a resource, something you could look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Nice.
definitely get advice from a lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
Thank you for
coming.
having me.
Yes.
This was fun.